As night fell over the Pacific, Jai-1 stood at the observation window, looking down at the dark waters below. Somewhere down there lay proof that humanity's past was far more complex than anyone had imagined. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the brink of something momentous, something that would change not just human history, but the future of the entire galaxy. Tai-Sung joined her at the window, his excitement from earlier replaced by quiet contemplation. "What do you think we'll find down there?" he asked softly. Jai-1 shook her head. "I don't know," she replied honestly. "But whatever it is, it was important enough for our ancestors to hide it away. The question is, were they hiding it from someone else, or from us?" The structure's energy signature pulsed quietly in the depths below, like a heartbeat awakening from a long slumber, waiting to reveal its secrets to a world that had forgotten it ever existed. Lee Jun-ho stood at his control station, running through the standard scanning procedures he had performed countless times before. His fingers moved confidently across the holographic controls as he adjusted the scanning beam's frequency. It was supposed to be a simple structural analysis of the underwater anomaly, just another day's work for the chief engineer of the expedition. The beam penetrated the waters, touching the ancient structure's surface. For a split second, everything seemed normal. Then Jun-ho's instruments exploded with readings. "Something's wrong," he muttered, frantically checking his equipment. Deep beneath the waves, a change was taking place. Lights, dormant for millennia, began to flicker and pulse with increasing intensity. A low, deep hum vibrated through the water, so powerful that the Stellar Seeker's crew could feel it in their bones. Jun-ho's eyes widened in horror as he realized what was happening. "Cut power. Cut everything," he shouted across the bridge, his voice cracking with panic. His hands flew across the controls, trying to stop the scan, but the beam had already done its work. The structure was awakening. The ocean floor began to shift and crack. Massive sections of seafloor that had laid undisturbed for thousands of years suddenly broke apart. The research vessel's sensors registered movement on a scale that seemed impossible. Entire sections of what they had thought was natural seabed were moving, revealing themselves as massive metal panels. "All hands, brace for turbulence," the ship's captain ordered as massive waves generated by the underwater movement rocked the Stellar Seeker. The crew held on to their stations as the ship's stabilizers fought to maintain position. Through the observation windows, they watched in awe as something enormous emerged from its ancient slumber. The sleek lines of what could only be described as a supercarrier began to rise from its watery grave. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making it appear like a ship-shaped void in the ocean. Dr. Kim Ji-won gripped the railing of her observation post, her knuckles white. "That's not possible," she whispered, but the evidence was rising before her eyes. The vessel was larger than any ship humanity had ever built, larger than anything the Coalition had in its current fleets. Alarms began blaring throughout the Stellar Seeker as ancient defense systems activated. Red warning lights flashed across every console on the bridge. The Coalition vessel's sensors detected multiple energy signatures powering up within the massive ship, systems that had lain dormant for thousands of years coming back to life. "We need to get out of here," someone shouted, but before any action could be taken, reality itself seemed to shimmer on the bridge. The air sparkled with points of light that coalesced into a human form. A woman wearing what appeared to be a military uniform, unlike any in recorded history. The hologram stood tall, her presence commanding attention despite her incorporeal nature. Her uniform was pristine, bearing insignias and markings that no historian had ever seen. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong, carrying an authority that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. "I am Park So-jin, AI commander of the TSS Eternus," she announced, her eyes scanning the bridge crew. "After 50,000 years of dormancy, the Eternal Guardian awakens." Jun-ho's instruments were going crazy, registering energy readings that defied their scales. The supercarrier below was still rising, water cascading off its massive hull in waterfalls. Its true size was becoming apparent. It was larger than any city humanity had built in the modern era. The Stellar Seeker's engines hummed quietly as it maintained its position above the vast Pacific Ocean. The research vessel's sleek hull gleamed under Earth's sun, its sophisticated sensors probing deep beneath the waves. Inside the main research bay, screens flickered with data as teams of scientists from across the galaxy worked tirelessly to understand what they had found. Dr. Han Ta-Sung rubbed his tired eyes, his fingers trembling slightly as they hovered over the holographic display. He had been staring at the readings for hours, running test after test, hoping to find some explanation that made sense. But there was no mistake. The massive structure they had detected was definitely not natural. The discovery had started as a routine survey. The Coalition had been mapping Earth's ocean floors, part of their ongoing mission to understand humanity's homeworld better. They had expected to find ruins of ancient human civilizations, perhaps even evidence of early technological development. What they hadn't expected was this. Ambassador Kim. Ta-Sung called out, his voice cracking with excitement and fear. Please, you need to see this immediately. Dr. Kim Ji-won had been observing from the upper deck, talking with Coalition officials about their findings. She excused herself and hurried down to Tai-Sung's station. As Earth's primary liaison with the Galactic Coalition, she had seen many surprising discoveries, but something in Tai-Sung's voice made her heart race. What have you found? She asked, leaning over his shoulder to look at the complex array of readings. Tai-Sung's fingers danced across the controls, bringing up a three-dimensional map of the ocean floor. Look here, he said, highlighting a massive structure buried under layers of sediment. We thought it was just an unusual geological formation at first, but these energy readings. He pulled up another screen showing pulsing patterns of energy emanating from deep within the structure. Ji-won's eyes widened as she processed what she was seeing. The energy signature was unlike anything in the Coalition's vast database of known technologies. But that wasn't what made her breath catch in her throat. There, clear as day, were markers that could only have come from one source: human technology. That's impossible, she whispered, but the evidence was right in front of her. These readings suggest this structure is at least 50,000 years old. Our ancestors were barely using stone tools then. The discovery sent ripples of excitement and concern through the research vessel. More scientists gathered around Tai-Sung's station, each offering their own theories and observations. The structure appeared to be roughly the size of a small city, but its purpose remained a mystery. Coalition archaeologists had studied human history extensively since first contact 30 years ago. They had a clear timeline of human technological development, or at least, they thought they did. This discovery threatened to upend everything they thought they knew about Earth's past. We need to send down probes, Tai-Sung suggested, already programming the survey drones. Whatever this is, it's still active after all this time. The energy readings are weak, but they're there. Ji-won nodded, but her mind was racing with implications. If humans had built something this advanced so long ago, what else might be hidden? What had happened to make them lose such technology? And more importantly, why had they buried it? The probes descended through the dark waters, their lights cutting through the murky depths. As they got closer to the structure, their sensors began picking up more details. Smooth surfaces that couldn't have been shaped by nature, geometric patterns that spoke of intelligent design, and somewhere deep within, a faint pulse of energy that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. Look at these markings, one of the Coalition scientists pointed out. They're definitely artificial, but they don't match any known human writing system. Ji-won leaned closer to the screen, studying the strange symbols. Something about them seemed familiar, yet utterly alien at the same time. It was as if they were looking at a missing chapter of human history, one that had been deliberately erased. As the day wore on, more data poured in from the probes. The structure wasn't just buried, it had been deliberately sealed away. Layer upon layer of advanced materials protected whatever lay within, materials that shouldn't have existed at the time of its construction. The Stellar Seeker's captain called an emergency meeting with Earth's authorities. This wasn't just an archaeological find. It was potentially a game-changing discovery that could rewrite human history. Security teams were dispatched to protect the site, and additional research vessels were called in. "Please remain calm," Commander Park's hologram continued, seeming to notice the fear and confusion on the faces around her. "The Eternus means you no harm. We were placed here to protect, not to destroy." Dr. Han Ta-Sung stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. "Protect us from what?" he asked. The hologram's expression grew serious. "From what's coming," she replied. "From what has always been coming. The reason we chose to hide our true heritage and wait for the right moment to return." More systems were activating across the massive vessel. Lights began to trace patterns across its hull, revealing intricate designs that seemed to shift and change as they watched. The hum that had started it all grew stronger, more purposeful. "Your scan," Commander Park explained, turning to Junho, "contained the exact frequency sequence we were waiting for. Humanity has finally reached the technological level necessary for the Eternus to awaken safely." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as massive sections of the supercarrier began to transform, panels shifting and reforming like a giant puzzle rearranging itself. What had appeared to be simply a massive ship was revealing itself to be something far more complex. "The Galactic Coalition," Commander Park said, looking at the mixed crew of humans and aliens, "was not humanity's first venture into interstellar cooperation. We have much to show you, much to teach you about your true heritage." As if to emphasize her words, new holographic displays appeared around her, showing images that defied understanding. Humans walking among the stars without ships, cities that dwarfed planets, technologies that seemed like magic even by coalition standards. "Everything you know about human history," she said softly, "is about to change. The sleeping giant has awakened, and with it, humanity's true destiny can finally begin." The Stellar Seeker's crew stood in awed silence, watching as humanity's forgotten past rose from the depths of Earth's oceans, bringing with it questions that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The age of slumber was over, and a new chapter in human history was about to begin. The holographic image of Commander Park stood in the center of the Stellar Seeker's main conference room. Around her, coalition officials and scientists sat in stunned silence as she revealed humanity's true history. The room's lights had been dimmed, allowing the historical recordings to play out in vivid detail above their heads. Before the Great Sleep, Park's hologram explained, humanity had spread across not just this galaxy, but several others. The display showed massive ships, far more advanced than anything the Coalition had ever built, crossing the vast distances between galaxies as easily as modern ships traveled between stars. Dr. Yoon Sangmai leaned forward in her chair, her eyes wide with wonder and disbelief. As the Coalition's leading historian on human civilization, she had spent decades studying Earth's past. Now, everything she thought she knew was being turned upside down. "These recordings," Park continued, "are from the golden age of humanity, approximately 50,000 years ago by your calendar. The images shifted to show sprawling cities that stretched into space, structures that dwarfed planets, and humans walking among the stars without the need for ships or protective suits." Sangmei's hands trembled as she took notes, trying to capture every detail. "But how?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How did we lose all of this? Why did we choose to forget?" The hologram's expression grew solemn. "The enemy," she said simply, and the displays changed to show darkness spreading across the galaxies. They came from beyond the galactic rim, beings of such power and malevolence that they threatened all life everywhere. The conference room fell silent as images played out of a war fought on a scale that defied comprehension. Entire solar systems were used as battlegrounds. Stars were wielded as weapons. Humanity and their allies fought with everything they had, but the enemy kept coming. "We were winning," Park explained, surprising everyone. "Our technology, Our understanding of the universe was superior, but the enemy had one advantage. They were patient. They could wait for millions of years, seeding destruction that would bloom in centuries to come. Dr. Han Ta-sung raised his hand. So humanity chose to hide, to forget everything. Not hide, Park corrected. To prepare. The enemy's greatest weakness was their pride. They couldn't imagine a species deliberately choosing to regress, to become primitive again. So that's exactly what we did. The displays showed a massive coordinated effort. Thousands of ships like the Eternus were built and hidden across Earth and other worlds. The most advanced human technology was sealed away, waiting for the right moment. Then, systematically, humanity began to forget. The Eternus isn't just a warship, Park continued. It's a seed ship containing the sum total of human knowledge and achievement. Every discovery, every advancement, every piece of our history, all preserved and waiting to be reawakened. Sang-mi felt tears in her eyes as she watched recordings of the final days before the Great Sleep. Millions of humans voluntarily giving up their advanced technology, choosing to start over from the most basic tools, all to protect their legacy and future. But why now? Someone asked. Why has the Eternus chosen this moment to awaken? Park's hologram smiled. Because humanity has reached the perfect balance point, advanced enough to understand and use what we preserved, but not so advanced that the enemy would detect the awakening. The Coalition's scan provided the final key we were waiting for. The displays showed new images, detailed maps of hidden installations across Earth and throughout the galaxy. Each one contained different aspects of humanity's legacy, waiting to be rediscovered. There's more, Park added. The Eternus is just one of many seed ships. As we speak, others are awakening across the galaxy. Humanity's allies, those who chose to sleep with us, are also stirring. The implications were staggering. The Coalition had thought they were helping to guide a young species into the galactic community. Instead, they had been watching over the sleeping form of one of the most advanced civilizations in history. Everything we've shown you, Park said, is just the beginning. The Eternus contains teaching systems that will help humanity remember what was forgotten. But it must be done carefully, systematically, to avoid drawing attention too soon. Sang-mi stood up, her historian's mind racing with questions. The myths, she said suddenly. The legends of gods and heroes with impossible powers. They weren't myths at all, were they? They were memories, fragments of the truth surviving through the ages. Park nodded. Your ancestors were clever. They hid the truth in plain sight, disguising it as mythology and fantasy. Even as they forgot their true nature, they kept passing down the essential stories, waiting for the day they would be understood. The conference room erupted in discussion as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't just another species joining the galactic community. They were one of its founding members, awakening from a long strategic slumber. As the historians and scientists debated around her, Sang-mi walked to a window, looking out at the massive form of the Eternus floating in the ocean below. 50,000 years of history waited within its halls, waiting to be rediscovered. Humanity's true legacy was about to be unveiled, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. Commander Park's hologram appeared beside her. Are you ready? The AI asked softly. To learn the truth about your own species. Sang-mi nodded, her heart racing with anticipation. We've been ready for 50,000 years, she replied. We just didn't know it. The Coalition's emergency chamber buzzed with tension as hundreds of representatives from across the galaxy argued among themselves. The massive circular room, usually a place of measured debate, had become a cauldron of fear and uncertainty. Ambassador Kang Do-hyun stood at the central podium, his calm exterior masking his inner turmoil. The Proximan delegate, their crystalline form shimmering with agitation, spoke first. We cannot sit idle while an ancient superpower reawakens. The human installations are a threat to galactic stability. We must act now, before they fully activate. Do-hyun watched as more representatives voiced their agreement. The chamber's holographic displays showed live feeds from Earth, where more ancient structures were emerging from their millennial slumber. Mountains were opening to reveal hidden bases. Deserts shifted as buried installations rose from the sands. "Distinguished colleagues," Du Hyun said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I understand your fears, but let us remember that humanity has been a peaceful member of the coalition for 30 years. We have shown no aggression, no hostile intent." The Meridian representative, a tall figure wrapped in flowing robes, stood up. "Peaceful, perhaps, but that was before we knew what you truly were, before we knew you had hidden such powerful weapons across the galaxy." More reports flowed into the chamber. Ancient human outposts were awakening not just on Earth, but across dozens of worlds. Each activation sent shockwaves through the Coalition's carefully maintained power structure. "They're not weapons," Du Hyun corrected firmly. "They're libraries, archives, repositories of knowledge. The Eternus itself is a seed ship meant to preserve and protect, not to destroy." But even as he spoke, a new alert flashed across the chamber's screens. An ancient human installation had just activated in the Centauri system, its energy signature dwarfing anything the Coalition had ever recorded. The Arcturian delegation, usually among humanity's strongest allies, seemed troubled. "Knowledge can be as dangerous as any weapon, Ambassador. Your species chose to hide this power once. How can we trust that your intentions remain peaceful now that it's awakening?" Do Hyun took a deep breath. He had spent the last several hours studying the historical records revealed by the Eternus. "We hid our technology to protect the galaxy," he explained. "Our ancestors faced a threat so grave that they chose to forget their own advancement rather than risk it falling into the wrong hands." The chamber grew quiet as he continued. "They could have used their power to dominate, to rule. Instead, they chose to sleep, to wait, to protect. Does that sound like the actions of a species you should fear?" A new commotion arose as more reports arrived. The ancient installations weren't just awakening. They were beginning to communicate with each other. Networks dormant for 50,000 years were coming back online. The Proximan delegate spoke again. "And what of these other allies you speak of? These other species who supposedly slept with humanity? How do we know they won't seek revenge for being forgotten?" As if in answer, the chamber's main display lit up with a new signal. Far out in the Orion arm, something massive was stirring. Energy readings suggested it was even larger than the Eternus. "We must act now," several delegates shouted, "before it's too late." Do Hyun raised his hands for silence. "Look at how the installations are awakening," he urged. "There's no aggression, no hostile action. Each activation has been careful, measured, deliberate. These are not the actions of a civilization preparing for war." The chamber's mood began to shift as more representatives considered his words. The evidence was clear. Despite their incredible power, the ancient human installations had caused no harm, had threatened no one. "What we face now," Du Hyun continued, "is not a threat, but an opportunity. Humanity's ancient knowledge could benefit all species. The technology we preserved could solve problems we've struggled with for centuries." New reports continued to arrive. Each awakening installation was broadcasting the same message: peace, preservation, protection. The pattern was becoming clear to even the most skeptical delegates. "We stand at a crossroads," Du Hyun said softly. "We can react with fear and potentially start a conflict none of us want, or we can approach this situation with wisdom and patience." The Arcturian delegation conferred briefly before speaking. Perhaps we have been too hasty in our judgment. The evidence does suggest a peaceful awakening." More delegates began to nod in agreement. The initial panic was subsiding, replaced by cautious curiosity. The chamber's displays showed more installations awakening, each one adding its voice to the growing chorus of peace. "My species chose to sleep for 50,000 years to protect this galaxy," Du Hyun reminded them. "We forgot our own advancement, our own achievements, all to keep safe what we had built together with our ancient allies. Now that we remember, now that we're awakening, why would we destroy what we sacrificed so much to preserve? The chamber grew quiet as his words sank in. The galaxy was changing, yes, but perhaps not in the way they had feared. The sleeping giant was awakening not with a roar of conquest, but with a whisper of hope. As the emergency session drew to a close, Du Hyun looked out at the assembled delegates. The crisis wasn't over. There would be many more challenges ahead as humanity reclaimed its heritage. But for now, at least panic had been replaced by possibility. The dormant giant was stirring, and the galaxy was beginning to realize that perhaps this was not an ending, but a new beginning. Toy Minji stood before the neural interface chamber aboard the Eternus, her heart pounding in her chest. The room hummed with energy, its surfaces glowing with a soft blue light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her breathing. As Earth's leading quantum physicist, she had been chosen to be the first to connect with the ancient ship's systems. "Are you ready?" Commander Park's hologram asked, her form shimmering beside the interface pod. "Once we begin, there's no turning back." Minji nodded, trying to keep her hands from shaking. The interface pod opened like a blooming flower, revealing a cushioned interior lined with neural sensors. Technology far beyond anything humanity currently possessed, yet somehow familiar. "Your mind will remember," Park explained softly. "The pathways are still there, dormant but not destroyed. The knowledge of generations waits to flow through them once again." Taking a deep breath, Minji stepped into the pod. As it closed around her, she felt a moment of panic, quickly replaced by a strange sense of coming home. The neural sensors activated, making contact with her skin. The first touch of the ancient knowledge was like a spark of lightning through her consciousness. Images, sounds, feelings, 50,000 years of human achievement flooded into her mind. She saw cities that danced among the stars, ships that could cross galaxies in moments, technologies that broke the very laws of physics as she understood them. Tears streamed down her face as she remembered, not her own memories, but the collected knowledge of countless generations. "We were never meant to forget," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "We chose to sleep, to wait, to protect." Through the interface, she understood the true scope of humanity's sacrifice. The decision to forget hadn't been made lightly. Millions of humans had voluntarily given up their advanced knowledge, choosing to start again from the beginning, all to protect what they had built. Outside the pod, monitoring stations recorded unprecedented levels of neural activity. Minji's brain was lighting up in patterns never before seen, dormant sections awakening as ancient knowledge found its way home. Hours passed as she absorbed more and more information. She learned of the enemy that had threatened them, of the allies who chose to sleep alongside humanity, of the vast networks of hidden technology waiting to be rediscovered. When the interface finally released her, Minji emerged changed. Her eyes held a new depth of understanding. Her movements carried a grace that seemed almost otherworldly. The knowledge she had gained was already integrating itself into her consciousness. "It's beautiful," she said to the waiting scientists. "Everything we lost, everything we forgot. It's all still there, waiting for us to remember." Word of her successful interface spread quickly. Other scientists, engineers, and scholars came forward, eager to connect with their forgotten heritage. Each successful connection accelerated the process of remembrance. Within days, Earth's technology began to transform. The remembered knowledge sparked innovations at an unprecedented rate. Quantum computers that had taken years to develop were suddenly child's play. Energy problems that had plagued humanity disappeared overnight as ancient power systems came back online. The coalition observation teams watched in amazement as humanity's technological level advanced decades in mere days. Buildings reshaped themselves as forgotten architectural principles were remembered. Transportation systems evolved as ancient travel technologies were rediscovered. But it wasn't just technology that was transforming. The very way humans thought and perceived the world was changing. Neural pathways dormant for 50,000 years were reawakening, bringing with them abilities that seemed like magic to modern eyes. Minji found herself at the center of it all, helping others understand and integrate the ancient knowledge. "We're not becoming something new," she explained to amazed observers. "We're remembering who we always were." The Eternus databases continued to share their secrets. Each day brought new discoveries, new remembrances of humanity's true capabilities. The Coalition's scientists struggled to understand technologies that operated on principles they had never imagined possible. But amid the rapid advancement, Minji and the other interface scientists maintained a careful balance. They remembered not just the technology, but the wisdom that had led to the Great Sleep. The knowledge was being reintegrated thoughtfully, carefully, with full awareness of its power and responsibility. "We didn't forget because we were afraid," Minji explained to a gathering of Coalition representatives. "We forgot because we understood that some knowledge needs to be earned, not given. We needed to grow into our power again, to remember not just how to use it, but why." As more humans connected with the ancient knowledge, a new understanding spread across Earth. The sleeping giant was awakening not to dominate, but to protect once again. The sacrifices of their ancestors had preserved not just knowledge, but wisdom. The transformation continued, unstoppable yet controlled. Humanity was reclaiming its birthright, but doing so with the careful consideration their ancestors had shown. They remembered not just what they had been, but why they had chosen to forget. And as Earth changed, as humanity remembered, the galaxy watched and waited, wondering what this awakening giant would become now that it remembered its true nature. Nan Hyunwoo stood on the command deck of the Eternus, watching as another ancient outpost awakened from its long slumber. What the Coalition had thought was a simple asteroid belt near Proxima Centauri was revealing itself to be an enormous shipyard, its automated systems coming back online after 50,000 years of dormancy. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had found his true calling. Though he had only been captain of the Eternus for a week, the neural interface had given him knowledge that made him feel as if he had commanded the ship for centuries. "The Centauri shipyards are at 40% activation, Captain," his first officer reported. "Early estimates suggest it could construct an entire fleet in days once fully operational." The Coalition observation fleet hung back at a safe distance, their sensors struggling to make sense of what they were seeing. Their most advanced ships, once considered the peak of technological achievement, now seemed like primitive toys compared to what humanity was remembering. In the distance, massive construction arms began to move, shaking off millennia of cosmic dust. Energy fields flickered to life, revealing construction bays large enough to build ships that could dwarf entire Coalition fleets. "Another signal detected, Captain," the communications officer announced. "The Sirius Defense Network is responding to our activation codes." Hyunwoo nodded, unsurprised. What the Coalition had dismissed as random pulsar emissions was actually an intricate network of defense platforms, hidden in plain sight for thousands of years. One by one, they were waking up, recognizing the Eternus' signal. A Coalition diplomatic vessel requested permission to approach. Hyunwoo granted it, watching as their ship, once considered state-of-the-art, seemed to crawl through space compared to the Eternus' capabilities. "They're frightened," Commander Park's hologram observed, appearing beside him. "The power shift is happening faster than anyone anticipated." Indeed, across the galaxy, more and more ancient human installations were revealing themselves. A mysterious nebula in the Orion sector transformed into a massive research station. A supposedly natural formation near Alpha Centauri unfolded into a defense platform larger than most moons. "Captain," his science officer called out, "we're detecting similar activations in the Pleiades cluster. The signatures match those of our old allies." Hyunwoo smiled. Humanity hadn't been the only species to choose the Great Sleep. Other civilizations, equally advanced and equally wise, had hidden their true nature alongside humanity. Now they too were awakening. The Coalition diplomatic vessel finally arrived, and their representatives were escorted to the Eternus' conference room. Their eyes widened as they took in technology that operated on principles their science hadn't even theorized yet. "We mean no harm," Hyun-woo assured them, watching as holographic displays showed more activations across the galaxy. "Everything we hid, everything we forgot. It was all to protect, not to conquer." But even as he spoke, another ancient installation revealed itself. The great red spot on Jupiter, long thought to be a storm, began to change. Beneath its swirling clouds, a massive station was awakening, its purpose yet to be remembered. "Your species," the coalition ambassador said carefully, "appears to have been far more influential than we realized." Hyun-woo nodded. "We didn't just explore the galaxy," he explained. "We helped shape it. The very laws of physics that your ships use for faster-than-light travel, those weren't natural discoveries. They were carefully laid breadcrumbs, left behind to guide younger species toward the stars." More reports flooded in. Ancient human outposts were activating faster now, each one responding to the others in a cascade of awakening. Defense networks, research stations, shipyards, and entire infrastructure hidden for 50,000 years was coming back online. The Eternus itself was still revealing new capabilities. Systems that had been dormant during the initial awakening were now activating, showing levels of technology that even the recovered memories hadn't prepared them for. "Look there." Han-woo pointed to a distant star cluster. What had appeared to be a natural phenomenon was transforming, revealing itself as an enormous gateway. "The network is almost complete. Soon, we'll remember everything." The coalition representatives watched in stunned silence as humanity's true legacy unveiled itself. Their careful political balance, maintained for centuries, was being completely rewritten in a matter of days. But Hyun-woo and his crew maintained their peaceful stance. Each awakened installation, each recovered technology, was carefully documented and shared with coalition scientists. Humanity had not forgotten the wisdom that had led to the Great Sleep. "The power shift isn't about dominance," Hyun-woo explained to the worried coalition representatives. "It's about protection. The enemy that forced us to hide still lurks beyond the galactic rim. We needed to remember who we were before they return." As if to emphasize his words, another ancient system activated. This time, it was a massive shield network designed to protect entire sectors of space from threats beyond imagination. The sleeping giant had awakened, and with it, the true face of the galaxy was being revealed. Humanity's influence had never truly waned. It had simply been waiting for the right moment to remember its purpose. And as Hyun-woo stood on his command deck, watching the galaxy transform around him, he understood that this was just the beginning. The real challenges, and the real reasons for their ancient sacrifice, were still to come. Bai Jinna walked through the gleaming halls of the reformed Galactic Council, her footsteps echoing on floors made of materials that had been forgotten for 50,000 years. The building itself was a symbol of the new era, constructed using recovered human technology, but incorporating architectural styles from every coalition species. The main chamber ahead had been redesigned to accommodate representatives from civilizations that were only now emerging from their long sleep. Beings that had once been myths and legends were taking their places alongside the younger races of the galaxy. Jinna paused before entering, remembering how different everything had been just months ago. Then, humanity had been seen as newcomers to galactic civilization. Now, the truth had transformed everything. The chamber doors opened silently, revealing a space that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Representatives from across the galaxy turned to watch as she entered. Some were familiar coalition species, while others were ancient allies only recently awakened from their own hibernation. "The Council recognizes Representative Bai Jinna of Earth," announced the speaker, their voice carrying across the chamber in all languages simultaneously, another gift of recovered technology. Jinna took her place at the central podium. The position itself was new. Humanity's role as one of the founding species had earned them a permanent place in the Council's leadership. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice clear and strong. "A century ago, We believed humanity was taking its first steps into the galaxy. Now we know we were actually returning home. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing the transformation that had swept across known space. Ancient human outposts, now fully awakened, worked alongside Coalition facilities. Ships of designs lost to time now patrolled alongside modern vessels. But this awakening isn't just about humanity, Jinnah continued. Each day, more of our ancient allies emerge from their sleep. Species we have forgotten, civilizations that chose to hibernate alongside us, all returning to help prepare for what's coming. The chamber grew quiet at these words. Everyone knew about the threat that had forced humanity and their allies into hibernation. The enemy beyond the galactic rim, patient and terrible, that had prompted such an extraordinary response. Our ancestors didn't hide out of fear, she reminded them. They hid to protect, to preserve, to prepare. They understood that some battles cannot be won through force alone. Sometimes victory requires patience, wisdom, and perfect timing. New reports appeared on the chamber's displays. Another ancient ally had awakened. A species thought to be merely legend was emerging from 50,000 years of sleep. Their technology, like humanity's, was beyond anything the Coalition had imagined possible. Look around this chamber, Jinnah gestured to the assembled representatives. Young and old species sitting together as equals. This was the dream our ancestors fought to protect. This is why they chose to sleep. To forget, to wait for the right moment. The Coalition representatives nodded in understanding. The initial fear of humanity's awakening had given way to appreciation as recovered technologies solved problems that had plagued their civilizations for generations. We stand at the dawn of a new era, Jinnah continued. Not one of dominance or control, but of cooperation and shared purpose. The sleeping giants have awakened not to rule, but to fulfill their ancient duty, to protect all life in this galaxy. As she spoke, more displays activated, showing the massive defense networks now forming along the galaxy's edge. Ancient human technology merged with Coalition innovations, creating defenses far stronger than either could have achieved alone. The enemy will return, she acknowledged. But this time, we will face them together. Not as separate species, not as Coalition and Ancient Ones, but as a unified galaxy prepared to defend all life. The chamber erupted in agreement. Representatives from species, both ancient and young, voiced their support. The political maneuvering that had dominated Coalition politics had given way to a new spirit of cooperation. Jinnah looked out at the assembled representatives, seeing hope in faces both familiar and strange. The awakening had changed everything, but perhaps that had been the plan all along. Perhaps humanity and their allies had slept not just to hide, but to give the galaxy time to grow, to develop, to be ready for this moment. As the session concluded, Jinnah walked to one of the chamber's vast windows. Earth was visible in the distance, now surrounded by recovered structures that had slept beneath its oceans and within its mountains. The planet looked different now, its true nature revealed at last. The sleeping giant had awakened, but it hadn't awakened alone. Across the galaxy, ancient allies were rising from their slumber. Together, they would face whatever came from beyond the rim. Together, they would protect the galaxy they had helped shape so long ago. And as Jinnah watched ships of impossible design glide past the window, she smiled. The new era wasn't just about remembering the past. It was about building a future their ancestors had sacrificed everything to protect. The end was actually just the beginning.